Hi, I'm Jeff Davis of the Sonoma County Wine Library Association with today's visual oral history with Mac McDonald, a winemaking pioneer. Today's video is also brought to you by the Sonoma County Library Foundation and the Sonoma County Wine Library. We're here on a rainy President's Day, and I realized last weekend that we scheduled this for the Monday of the three-day weekend. So I wanted to make sure it was okay with Mac. I didn't want to interrupt his plans with his wife, Lil. So I texted him to say, hey, next Monday, is it still a good day for you to get together? And he wrote back and said, every day is a good day in the life of Mac and Ms. Lil. I liked that. You sound like a man who has experienced a life well lived.
That's right. If I wake up in the morning, it's a good day.
Yeah. Let's start with that fateful day many, many years ago when you were 12 years old out in the woods of East Texas when you had a wine that just blew your mind. And you want to talk about that?
Yes, I grew up 89 miles south of Dallas, Texas. I mean, way in the country, in the woods, in the sticks, so to speak. And my grandfather, who I stayed with most of my life when I was younger, he had a lot of hunting dogs. And so it used to be a lot of folks come out of Dallas and Fort Worth and Houston to come back up into those woods to go hunting with my grandfather. One of those guys used to drink Burgundy. Remember, at 12 years old, I didn't know a Burgundy from a Chardonnay or Zin. But anyway, these guys was giving him a hard time about drinking communist wine. I mean, in this, the 60s, in Texas, you didn't drive foreign cars or wear foreign shoes. You didn't drink foreign booze,
Right.
And so as they was giving him a hard time, he looked at me and he goes, hey, what would you like to have this bottle of wine? And I said, yes, I would. I didn't know how to open it. But I remember taking a pocket knife and I dug as much of the cork out as I could and I took a swig out of it. And I thought, well, this is pretty damn good, And I'd had wine before, made out of, wild berries and cherries, but I'd never tasted anything like that. And so that was my start of wanting to be in the wine business.
Yeah. Well, that's setting the bar high when you're trying to shoot for a Burgundian style wine.
But I didn't know any better. Right. I didn't know. All I knew is what these guys were saying. It was a communist wine. I knew what a communist was supposed to be at 12 years old, but I didn't know anything about the wine. And it was many years later before I got a connection of what Burgundies are.
And you really liked that varietal, so you continued to make, when you got into the business, Pinot Noir.
Yeah, I never lost that taste out of my mind. Some folks find that kind of strange, but I think if we all reflect back when we were a kid, maybe went to our grandmother's house or our mom and they made a cookie or something, we can remember that cookie just like yesterday. I can still remember that wine.
Yeah.
I remember tasting it out of that
Sure.
bottle and I know exactly what the flavor was.
Well, as we often talk about, that was your epiphany wine.
That way.
I remember my epiphany wine very well too.
Yeah, that's just it.
So I understand you were talking to a coach during school and about wanting to be a winemaker, and he said, well, you got to go to California. So.
Yeah, my high school coach, I was kind of a hotshot, sports person. And then my coach kind of took me under his wings a lot. And all I talked about was I wanted to be a winemaker. Well, nobody else in the school was even talking about wine and being a winemaker. But he took it, pretty seriously. And in high school, he says, boy, all you talk about is you want to be a winemaker. If you want to make wine, you need to move to California. So right out of high school, I got myself a ride to California so I could learn how to make wine.
Was that like 1962 you arrived?
1962, latter part of 1962.
And
I ended up in Oakland, California.
Sure.
And I was there looking, for the vineyards because I was told that I'd had to move to California. I didn't realize that there are certain areas that grew grapes. I didn't know anything about that. Yeah. My relatives, some of them good old Baptists, used to tell me, boy, you're going to die and go to hell, doing that wine. So when I got to Oakland, I started asking folks on the street, where are the vineyards? And they would always say, well, you have to go across the bridge. I mean, to get out of Oakland to go north, you got to go across a bridge, no matter how you go, right? One day I asked this guy about, vineyards, and he goes, "You mean up there where they grow them grapes?" And he goes, "No, you got to go up to Mendocino, and I had no idea what Mendocino was. And on the whole, this guy was a minister, and he goes, "Boy, you shouldn't be messing with that wine and stuff,
Yeah.
And I thought, well, here I go again. But I finally figured out that I had to go across the bridge, the Carquinez Bridge, and go up to 101 to get to Mendocino County.
Well, it's interesting because they were making wine in Sonoma County by that time, early 60s. Napa was a little less, there were certainly, Charles Krug was here then, and but yes, I guess Mendocino, I didn't know Mendocino was known for being a wine producing region that early. But.
Well, I'd like to, the wines out of Mendocino, for my first taste of them. And I particularly kind of like individuals, a guy named John Parducci. I got a chance to go up and hang out with Mr. Parducci quite often. And I stopped by a couple of times to see a guy, I think his name was Pat Paulson or someplace.
Pat Polson,
Yeah, he had a winery. But I found the wines out of Mendocino County to be more to my taste, that was me personally. I didn't know anything about reviews and all of this stuff and all this marketing stuff. I had no idea anything about all that stuff. I just have always had an idea about wine. You like what you like.
Did Mr. Parducci help you on your path? Did he provide you some great information?
He helped me a lot, but I don't think he knew how much he helped me. In the beginning, I would go up and see him, and he's the only person at that time would kind of like give me, a chance to talk. And the way I met him is I was in the tasting room, and I talked to the people behind the tasting, people who were pouring tasting. I talked to them, and they would talk to me, and they were nice. And then he would come into the tasting room once in a while, and he was really one of the grumpiest old guys that you ever want to see. I mean, really, until you get to know him, and then you find out he's just a pushover, So I was in the tasting room, and he goes, "You're always up here. How come you're always up here?" And I told him, I want to learn about vineyards. I want to learn how grapes are grown. And I did. I wanted to learn from the bottom up. And every time I'd go up, then he'd say, "You here again?" And then he'd just, "Come on." So he'd walk to the tasting room and walk out, whatever they were doing. And he would be talking to the employees and yelling at them and talking to them, telling them what not to do and all of that type of stuff. So I'd done that for like 6 months with him,
Wow.
And he would say things, and he'd say something to the winemakers or, the cellar peoples, and I'd get home and I'd write all that stuff down, how he would talk about it. I still use that book to this day.
That's great.
But I didn't know at the time when I was writing all that down that I was going to use it. So that's kind of along the way, and as time go on, I met other people in the wine business.
One of which was Charlie Wagner of Camus Vineyards.
That's
in
exactly
Napa,
right.
A real high-end
That's my hero. Mr. Charles Wagner is my hero. I was over in the Napa Valley riding around my old beat-up car, and I saw this old guy out in the vineyard, and I get out of my car, and I go out and I start talking to him. And he was nice, and then I hung around watching him, play around with vines. And then a couple of weeks, I would back up there again, and he was out there in the vineyard. He had his hat on, his old overall things, and I was used to that because all my family always wore these breeches, And so he had on a kind of a straw hat, and I always, love my hats. And I just hit it off with him. And so I hung out with that guy for 9 months.
That's crazy.
I had no idea who he was. I had no idea. And one day I was over there, and the tasting room manager came out, and he said to me, "How come you always up here bothering Mr. Wagner? I'm at Camus Vineyards, right?" I had no idea that this guy was the owner of.
Right.
And I think old Randy Dunn was around at that time, and he was a winemaker. So I thought Randy owned the winery, and I thought he was just a old geezer working out in the field. And so we talked, and I remember that tasting room manager was pretty excited and upset with me, but Mr. Wagner didn't pay any attention. And I just kept working with him in the vineyard. He'd tell me all about the soil, how you have to, match the rootstock with the type of soil you have and how to prune stuff. And I said, well, I don't want to, prune these vines. He goes, don't worry about it, son. That's like a weed, And just to show you how genuine that Wagner family was.
Yeah.
Oh, I hung out there for 10 years or so, learning about the vineyard.
Wow, that's great.
Then I got to find out that Chuck was actually his son. And so Chuck just took me into the winery, and I would go there on weekends, and he'd run around all these vineyards, and we'd crawl through the vines, and just have a good old time just learning.
Were you doing any work at that time, or were you just following them?
I was just following him. I was just following him around. I mean, I didn't care about, I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get too tied up in a financial situation. I was never tied up on dollars. But he taught me a lot about the vineyard. And I done this, every chance I got, I was up there learning something about the vineyard. So I got to know more about vineyards than I did winemaking, because he taught that. I figured if he's that good at what he does, and he thinks that much about the vineyard, then that's maybe where I should concentrate. And that's what I done.
Yeah. You think most people would just think, well, I can't go walking on the property. I'm not going to get anywhere by doing that. They're going to kick me off. But you just didn't care, did you? You just went up and...
Nope. I figured, if you're going to own a restaurant, you ought to know something about where your goods are coming from. If you're going to own the thing, you need to kind of keep in touch to that.
Sure.
And it's more important in making wine. You got to kind of look at the soil you have so you can match your rootstock to that, how you prune it. All vineyards and all variety of grapes are not pruned the same. And so you have to, prune basically due to the environment, the sun, the wind, and all of that type of stuff. So he taught me all of that type of stuff. So after hanging out there for 10 years or so,
Jeez, that's a long
Mr.
time.
Wagner said to me one day, son, you ought to be in the wine business. And I'm looking at him, you gotta be kidding, I don't have that kind of money. And I said, well, Mr. Wagner, I'd like to, but I don't have that kind of money. You gotta remember, by this time, I had gotten to work with the cellar folks. I had got to work with assistant winemakers, a guy named John Bolter, John Lopez, and of course, the king himself, Chuck. And so I had gotten to know a little bit about, what happens inside of a winery, how to clean a tank. And I'm thinking, you own this place and you out here worried about this tank being clean or these barrels being clean. But one day, Chuck says to me, he goes, listen, if you don't have a good, clean, sterilized winery, then all of your wine could go bad. That hit me right in the back of my head.
Yeah, that affects
And
the
so
bottom
I'm
line.
glad that I learned all about sanitary things and sterilizing things at the winery. Good experience for me.
You should have been in the wine business by then.
Yeah.
You got a free education.
But one of the most important parts of this whole thing is learning about the vineyards. Then coming along one day, Chuck asked me, he says, what type of wine do you really want to concentrate on? And I told him Pinot Noir. Because by that time I had, got to know Bert Williams, used to be a part of the William and Sallium.
Right.
And I loved Bert's Pinot Noirs. And so then I learned, Pinot Noir and Burgundy, the same grape, and so I kind of got myself educated a little bit. And I think that's a big key in the wine business, is getting yourself educated, not just in running around out there, what people call market and all that stuff, but learning the basics of this whole business, and I think you'll be more successful. So with that in mind, the knowledge I had there, when he said, about I should be in the business, I said, I don't have that kind of money. He goes, don't worry about it, we'll help you. I'm thinking, what? And so that's when they found me a vineyard over in Marin County. And that's where I started making wine in '95. I didn't like it. '96, I didn't like it because Pinot Noirs at those times were real finicky, and I didn't understand all of that. Now, I worked around, Caymus to understand a lot about, Cabernets and that type of wine, but I never really understood.
Hardier grape.
Yeah, Pinot Noir.
So you're making this Pinot Noir
Oh, yeah.
at this time.
Yeah, and the good part about it, I would go in and he would say, you do what you think is the right way. You make the wine the way you want to make it, because you can't make wine for somebody else's palate. I can't make that for you. You make the wine that you think that you like, and hope enough folks out there like your style. And that's still my deal now. It's kind of like folks says, I don't like this type of food. But maybe you don't like how they cook that particular food. Maybe you do like that. I don't know what it could be, a piece of meat or fish or whatever it is. You just don't like the way they cook it. So that was a good experience for me. The other key that was really good is as we got along somewhere in the conversation, he asked me, what price range you gonna have? And also he asked me, who is gonna be your number one market? Who are you gonna market to? I never thought about that.
I was going to say, at that time, you must not have had an answer for those questions.
I didn't have an answer for it. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to answer that. And I said, I don't really know. He goes, you need to figure that out. It says, in a week or so, let's talk about this. You find out what style of wine you want to make. And I had tasted enough Pinot Noirs to find out really what I really kind of wanted. And I wanted something that didn't have a lot of oak on it. Maybe a little bit of sweet oak at the finish. I knew that. I didn't want a high residual wine. I knew that. But I didn't know anything about the price points, and how to do that. And so he explained to me how you determined price points, and I got that. Then the other part of that question is, who are you going to market to? And my first thought to him was, I want to market to anybody who's got money. I don't care what color they are, what they look like. If they got money, I want to market to them.
Yeah.
And so he goes, okay, that's a good start.
Yeah.
And that's how I got going in the wine business. The first couple of years that we kind of crafted wine, like I said earlier, it didn't meet my specification. And if I don't like something, I'm not going to put it in the bottle.
Well, right, you shouldn't, yeah.
No, I'm not going to put it in the bottle. Why would I put something out there for something like that I don't like? So every bottle of wine that Vision Cellars has made over these 25 plus years has been something that I like, and I enjoy.
We should give credit to Ms. Lill again. She's your wife, and you met her like mid-'70s, and you really attribute the success of the winery to her as well.
Well, I look at Miss Lill in Vision Cellars. She is co-owner of Vision Cellars. Tell you why we done that. She didn't care whether she was a percentage or not when we started. She goes, I'll help you get to the goal you want to go. But I thought her name should be on there to be a partner. So she owns 40% of Vision Cellars, and I own 60%. The reason that I wanted to control the interest is, and I told her, I said, shit, you might divorce me and go off and marry some young joker. And then you guys want to tell me I should be making white Zinfandel, and I can tell you guys go stick your head in the hole, because I own 60% of Vision Cellars.
Put a lot of thought into that.
Oh yeah, I do. I put a lot of thought in a lot of things that I've done with her. I also married her 50 plus years ago. I married her on her birthday, so I could get the birthday all together, you know what I mean?
The anniversary and the birthday.
The anniversary. I married on a birthday. That way I wouldn't forget to buy a gift. If I forgot, then, I didn't have to worry about it next time.
Remember that, fellas.
And so I used to buy her gifts, I'd ask I worked for the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, PG&E, for like 35 plus years. Wow. Very successful, learned a lot from that company. I'm thankful for them for giving me the opportunity to learn about budget. And I had like a $5 million budget I had to manage every year.
Nice.
So they let me do that. Thank them for letting me do that. And so she is not just only a partner, she is actually the person who runs Vision Cellars.
Yeah, you mentioned to me that she lets you do what you need to do, and then
Yeah.
she handles everything else.
That's right. When we formed the company, it's hard if you don't watch it for a husband and wife team to run and be in the same business, running the same company. It's easy for us because we drew a line in the sand from the start. That was, she would run the office, take care of all of that, to make sure we got paid correctly and on time. And then I would make all the wine, take care of the vineyard, and go out and run my mouth. And that's what I do. That's how we work it out. I'll be in the office sometime, and she'll be doing something, and I'll say something to her, and she'll say, "Don't you have something to do in the vineyard?" And I say, "Oh, okay, fine." So it works out perfectly.
Right.
I'm not just saying this because Miss Lil is my wife. I'm thinking that any business that you have, you better have somebody who understands numbers. And I'm telling you, she may not be much for the public out there, but I'm telling you, when she gets into that office and get behind that computer, that woman's one of the best in the business.
Right, that's great.
And I don't look at her as my wife in the office. When we're in the office, we're not husband and wife. We're partners.
Yeah. Got a couple other things I want to ask you about, some stories you told me, some other people who have helped you along the way. One of which was the highly respected master somm Larry Stone of San Francisco's Rubicon restaurant. You dropped a bottle off with him one time?
Well, Larry Stone was the wine director at Rubicon, and one of them master sommelier type guys. And I remember going in to see Larry, and I told Larry, I says, "I'll tell you, Larry, I'm down, I want to taste I meant set up an appointment with him, so I go down there, and I said, okay, I think I had a Marin County in 1997, I think it was, Marin County. And I wanted Larry to taste this wine. So I tell him, "Larry, how'd you go and get one of your favorite Burgundies and open it? And we're going to taste this wine against what you think is your best Burgundy." And Larry goes in there and he gets it and comes out.
That worked, huh?
Yeah, and he tasted that and he kind of shook his shoulders a little bit. And I said, "I think he likes this." I said that to myself. Miss Lil was sitting over there, she was with me. So she was sitting over there looking at her. And we had a great conversation. And he never said too much. I didn't ask him anything else, but he ordered the wine.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
then 3 weeks later, he was going to Hawaii to we're meeting with a bunch of master sommeliers, and he wanted them to taste this wine. And I sent it over there as he requested, and they all got to taste it. I think we had like 100 cases of that wine. Within 3 days after they done that tasting, we had none.
Wow.
And then these guys was calling from everywhere, and I'm thinking, well, but I always loved it. I thought it was good. It had that kind of a dirty, smoky aroma on it. And later I found out that came from the soil, because I dug a hole down in the ground, and I found out that it was that flavor of that nose flavor in the soil that gave it all of that. And that today, that wine tasted like that first Burgundy that I had. That reminded me of that wine so much. And that's my baby.
There you go. Well, your bravado is incredible that you just went into these people and just gave them suggestions on what to do, and they say, "Okay, well, I'll do that." But I guess it's your winning personality that also helped you out throughout the many years.
Well, people sometimes look at past history, and we all look at past history, but I think you have to look at the world in a more enlightening area. And yes, it's a long struggle in this world to achieve, but it's a long struggle for everybody, no matter who you are. And just because somebody is kind of mean or nasty to you, I don't think I need to be mean or nasty to them. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking how everybody else should. I'm just speaking, that's the way I look at it. I've had a lot of help in this wine business. A lot of folks right here in Sonoma County has really helped me out a lot.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
I can recall when I didn't have a place maybe to do my wine, I just he was always say, you know what, I'll make a space for you, you know. And I think if you go into things correctly, you will have a better chance to get the way you want to go. Just like if I went to the Wagners and said, I want to be a winemaker, they probably wouldn't have helped me as much as they did.
Yeah.
But because I wanted to learn about the vineyard and the winemaking part come later, I think that's why they wanted to help me, because they could see this guy wants to learn about the business.
Yeah.
And they taught me about this business.
Tell me how you were inspired by African-American Somm Andre Mack.
I hate to say this, but Andre Mack is like one of my sons. I have two sons. Andre is my third son. That guy has a phenomenal palate. He has a phenomenal understanding about how the business world works. Not just wine, but the business world, because he's into so many other things.
Yeah, I saw he used to work for Citicorp, and then he got into the wine business.
Right, yeah. So he understands numbers, and he just has a phenomenal mind, and he reaches out. But I recall first reading about him that he had won this award. So I'm reading this article thing, and I'm thinking, now that's pretty good. That is pretty good, because for me, that was the first time, I forget what award it was, but it was the first highest award that any African American had received in the wine business. That I recall that. So I called him up.
Of course you did.
I called him up. I want to talk to this fellow, you know. And we talked. I don't know if I got him the first time or not, but maybe he called me back. I can't recall that. But we talked a little bit, and I got to know him. I said, you know, I like this guy. I didn't know that I don't know if he was thinking about getting into the wine business at that time. But anyway, he came out to Napa to work for Thomas Keller. And he said to me, he goes, you don't mind helping me find a place to stay, do you? And I told him, no, I don't mind it at all. So he showed up, you know, 4 or 5 months after that meeting, maybe a year, I'm not sure on the time frame. And he got there and he goes, you got my place for me? You haven't? I thought, where's my place? And I said, okay, fine. So I took him to one of the bedrooms, because we got a 4-bedroom house. There's just nobody there with me and Miss Lil. Hey, this is your room right here. This is
there it is.
Stay. He goes, no, I thought I had a place. I said, you do, you just got a place. So he stayed with me. I liked the guy because he didn't care if I woke him up at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock and said, hey man, let's go. He go, where we going? I said, the frost. We better go check on this frost protection. We got frost going on. We got to get up and get out of here. And so, bang, he was already going. And so we talk about wine, and I didn't understand his world. And so I was hoping that I could share my world and my knowledge with him, because I think that the more you share with someone, the better off the world is going to be,
right.
And the better off you're going to be.
So the Somm of the French Laundry was staying at your house.
Yep. He's just doing a great job with his product and his other businesses now.
Yeah, he did end up founding a winery up in Oregon.
Yes, he's got I think he's doing some stuff in California now, but he just got a good set. And plus, you know what? He knows a lot of folks in this business. That's a plus for you.
Sure, yeah.
He knows a lot of folks in the business, a lot of his buddies that he's worked at different locations and that type of thing. So he's done really good.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he was awarded a Somm award from Paris for being a top sommelier in the world when he was still in Texas.
Yeah, and I think I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he was in Spain for some recognition. I'm not sure what that was all about.
Yeah.
But I talk to him on a regular basis, you know. I try to help a lot of folks that I've come across in the wine business. I share a lot of stuff with them. A lot of time, you know, they feel, you know, I'm just an old geezer, but you know what?
Very knowledgeable.
My back mind is that this old geezer's made a shitload of money in this business, so you can call me what you want to call me, you know what I mean? And that's why you're in business, to make money, you know?
Well, I think the generosity of others and your desire to help other people is what led you to found the Association of African American Vintners, right?
Well, the reason that kind of looked at something, and by the way, I want to go on record to say this. There's a lady in Santa Rosa, her name is Joanne Diaz, was really instrumental in helping the Association of African Americans get started. She was very, very instrumental in this because she saw the need, as well as I did, that we needed to spread out the wine industry, because I think the wine industry is missing a big boat by not being exclusive to other folks, except, as we always say, older white men. Now, it's changed a lot in the last 10 or 15 years where you have a lot of women's getting recognition. But I don't see where the wine association is reaching out to other nationalities, whether they're Asian, Hispanic. I don't see that. And maybe I'm not in the right place or I'm not on enough social media to see that. But if the wine industry is sinking, you better find more customers, because the old geezers like myself, we're dying out. All these old folks, you go through, most of them are not around anymore. You know what I mean, when you look around. So who is going to be buying your product? People who, who kind of get going and stay in business a long time, they change their model on a regular basis. I don't think the wine industry as a whole has changed their model that much. And I think that that's the part that I wanted to play with the Association of African American Vendors. I didn't do that because I was wanting to do a black thing. I done that because I wanted more African Americans to drink wine. Now, once you do that, I don't care who wines you drink. You don't have to like my wine. You don't have to like my wine. That doesn't matter to me. As long as you enjoy wine, you helping an industry that I'm with.
Well, I think a lot of the African Americans and other nationalities don't have the bravado that you have and think that they could get away with going up and meeting somebody and learning about the business, so they just kind of hold back to themselves. And you gave them the opportunity and a place to come and learn about the business and get the support and inspiration they need to move forward.
Yeah, this was a small group when we started. We all was in Sonoma and Napa. I think it was about 7 of us. And we would meet at our home in Windsor and share information. What did we learn here? What experience we have there? I recall the Japanese had read about Vision Cellars, but they wasn't smart enough to look at the label on Vision Cellar. And so when they looked at the label, they says, you know what, we have some serious wine peoples here, and can you change that label and we'll purchase your wine? And I looked at him, you gotta be shitting me. Why would I wanna change my label, to fit your market? And I said to the guy, I said, you didn't ask me about the label on your Toyota when you put that on there, so why should you tell me what type of label that I put on here? I wanted folks to know I like art, I like African art, and that's why that label it was on there.
That's what they had a problem with, was the African artwork?
Yeah. And so I started, that organization with the idea of how we could help each other in this small group. Now it's probably in the last 3 or 4 years, it's probably grown 300 or 350 fold.
Yeah.
But I'm not so involved with the association anymore because it's just gotten too big for what I want to handle in my 82 years old.
Should we give credit to Ernie Banks and Vance Sharp?
Oh, yeah.
That helped you found it originally?
Dr. Bates was involved with this group, dear friend of mine. Vance Sharp, dear friend of mine. I think Vance is kind of retired and is taking it easy. And Dr. Bates, I think he just got tired of the traveling, and he's got so many other businesses and so many other things going for him. And then we had the Sterling family, that owned Estelina and Everett Ridge. They were involved with it. Another good friend that I was assisted in his winemaking was Daniel Bryan, running Tiger. And there were a few others, Theo Lee, Theophilus Lee, very nice young lady up in Mendocino County, doing a good job with her wines as well. And all the newer folks that's in the organization, I don't know that much about them. I read about what they're doing, but I'm glad to see them going in that direction.
Yeah.
I have a hard time really understanding, Jeff, the wine market, of where we going with this stuff. I'm sitting here thinking 3 months ago, when watermelon wine becomes your #1 seller, I kind of get to thinking, what the hell are we doing here?
Watermelon wine? Who's selling
Watermelon wine. The lady in Kansas, she started this winery, and she made a watermelon wine. It became her #1 seller. And some of this stuff that I taste out there is doing really, really well. So things are changing in the wine industry. That's another reason that I'm just not making any wine anymore.
Yeah.
I just don't know which way it's going.
Yeah, the soil and climate not quite right in Kansas, and of course they make elderberry wine in
Yeah.
northern part of the country. And
Yeah, because you go to the Midwest, there's all type of fruit wine, and it sells very well. You go to North Carolina, they make muscadine or something.
Muscadel.
Yeah, and it sells. Ohio, it sells. I just not.
They get what they give them.
Right, so you can make it out of anything, but that's okay. In fact, I made some pear wine many years ago because I had a pear tree and I had all these pears, and I made this pear wine. Came out pretty good. It was just a little bit too much residual for me, but otherwise it was pretty good.
You said you're starting to slow down a little bit yourself, and thankfully you had your son Jeff was helping you for a while and going out on tours and meeting with distributors and doing wine dinners and such.
Yes, that's our youngest son, Jeff. He actually helped. Was real instrumental in putting in the Miss Lil's vineyard. He went out and, we sent him to junior college to learn all about all that stuff. He had his youngest daughter as well. And they worked in the vineyard, helped me prune. They went over and worked some hours at Camus Vineyard, working with shelf staff, learning more and more about the vineyard side of things. I can teach them a lot on the inside, but I thought I wanted them to have the outside knowledge of vineyard from other folks. Eric Neal, he worked with all those type of folks. And then I had him hang out, at other wineries, and Jeff, when he was a kid, he worked in the vineyards a lot, harvesting grapes and all of that type of stuff. So he is scheduled to take it over, but it's not for me to tell them how that they should run the company if I'm not involved with it. Financially, I'll support them for 2 years. But they don't want to make the style of wine that I make. They also don't want to be looking at, this is Mac's kid. They want to be their own person, and I respect that for them. So I'm kind of glad that they don't want to keep it under Vision Cellars.
Create their own brand.
Yeah, because if it's successful, then they feel that it will only be because of me. If they fail, then they fail on their own. The times have changed how folks look at stuff. The wine industry, restaurant, everything has changed a lot. So I'm glad that they are looking at it different than I looked at it, because they want to make a wine they say is more costly to drink, and I don't have a problem with that. I didn't want that image because I wanted to make a small amount of wine and make a lot of money doing that, other than making a whole bunch of wine and making 100,000 cases and selling it and making $1 a bottle. You still make a lot of money. I wanted to do something different. That was my model. That's what I chose.
Yeah. Well, it's working well for you the way you did it, because you were served at the White House and the Black Music Month dinner. And
I don't know why, when we started this deal, another thing that Chuck asked me one day, he goes, what is it, the #1 thing that you really want to get done? And I'm sitting there looking at him, and I said, I'd like to have my wine served at the White House. And he just looked at me and kind of chuckled. And he didn't say nothing. And he goes, well, what's the next one? I said, I'd like to have my wine rated by the Wine Spectator, because I knew, back in the 90s, that if your wine got rated and you got a nice rating in the Wine Spectator, you could sell out just like that, and we have done that. Not only have I been invited to the Wine Spectator on 5 or 6 occasions, but I've been on a panel at the Wine Spectator.
Nice.
I've been rated by every magazine it is out there, our wines have.
Yeah.
And so those were the 2 goals that I had, and they've been fulfilled.
That's awesome.
I'm pretty proud of that.
Because you're not afraid to go after anything.
Yeah, so it's amazing how you meet folks, and I think having the right attitude in life helps that. I'm not saying I have the right attitude about everything, but there are a lot of things I feel I have a right attitude about it. I was doing a wine dinner in Houston, Texas, a place called Perry's Steakhouse, big fancy steakhouse. And this wine director told me, I'm going to have a guy here from the White House tonight, and he's going to taste your wines. And I thought, yeah, And so I'm there doing my thing, and then afterwards, all these people, they come up and talk to you. I'm from Texas, and I was in Houston, Texas, so everybody was just talking to me. And this guy says, I like your wine. I'd like to have your wines at the White House. Why they don't have your wines at the White House? And I says, I don't know. So he gave me his card. And of course, I took his card, put it in my pocket, and that was the end of it. So I get home. When I get home, I have all these cards, whether they're in my bag or in my pocket. Miss Lil was looking through the card, and she says, "Who's this guy from the White House here?"
Yeah, the White House.
What do you mean from the White House? I don't know who the guy. And she told me his name, and I said, I don't know. I don't remember eating it. She goes, how did you get the card? I said, I don't know. I guess he gave it to me.
Wow.
And so that was how we got our wines at the White House. Because you were at a wine dinner, somebody tastes your wine, and you go. So by the way, Jeff, I try to make it a point in my past in the wine business to not jump on every opportunity out there, but I look at how far that opportunity is going to advance my cause and Vision Cellars.
Right.
So my cause in life is to help others. If it's going to help others, I'll do the event and I'll give them the wine. But if it's not going to do that, I'm not going to give them the wine.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm going to have a party in a few weeks. Can I get some wine from you?
No. Because to do that, then you have to go through Miss Lil.
Oh, she's
And,
gonna say.
and no, you ain't gonna go there. In fact, a lot of times people call up and they want something, and somehow they'll call me, and I said, well, you need to talk to Miss Lil about that. You know what the first thing they said to me? That's okay, forget it. Because she know it's not gonna go anywhere. They know it's not gonna go anywhere. And that's what I say, it doesn't have to be your wife, but it has to be somebody who understands numbers. And she will give me a report on the 10th of every month. She'll run this report out. And she goes, we need to go over this report. And I look at it, and you look at all the giveaways that I've done, you know what I mean, and the causes. Wow. And we talk about the benefit of doing that. And if you ain't got if you don't receive any benefit, then what the hell are you doing it?
Right, right.
I mean, yeah, I do a lot of causes out there for folks who have projects that I see that they're doing something for older folks, or they're doing it for young kids or something like that, or veterans. I'm all on top of that, and she is as well. Yeah. But for somebody to go out and do the electric slide, I'm not into that.
I haven't asked you yet how you came up with the name Vision Cellars.
The name Vision Cellars came about because I worked for the Pacific Gas and Electric Company. By the way, I had a great job there. Great job that I had at PG&E. I told Miss Lil, you better get your finances all squared up because I'm going to quit in 2 years. She said, what do you mean I'm going to quit? I said, I'm going to quit and I'm going to make wine. I want to do wine. That's something that I've always wanted to do. And she says, oh, you sure you want to do that? And I said, yep. And I says, she goes, and then 2 days later, she goes, well, I'm on board with you if that's what you want to do. So I came home and I said, let's start thinking of a name. And she came up with Vision Cellars. And I had Macchios or something. I had some other name. And then I had my mom And my dad, by the way, my dad, everybody called him Sue, and that was long before Johnny Cash had a song about a man named Sue. And so she says, we should call it Vision Cellars. And I says, why? She goes, because it's always been your vision. And that's why the name Vision Cellars came about. If you look at my label, it has African art on it. One of the reasons for that is I like African art. And I looked around, and all the labels, they go out and pay somebody a whole bunch of money to draw up a label, and it didn't make any sense. You either had some barrels or grapevines or the leaves on it. Well, hell, we all know that, how grapes grow, you know what I mean? I wanted folks to be looking at my bottle and see a piece of art. You didn't have to like it.
Sure.
But I felt there was a piece of art. Good follow-up on that is, some folks told me nobody's gonna buy that wine with that African mash on. When I first got into New York City, I worked with a distributor called Winebow.
Right.
And I forget the owner's name. He invited me to his house for dinner.
Wow.
And at his house, when you go in, he had all this art, all this African art, things, with hoops in the nose and the ears. He had all this African art. And I said, that was a good choice, Mac. And so some folks didn't like it. Some wineries, some, wine shop wouldn't carry it because of the African mash.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's their business. They can handle it the way they want.
It's an artful product, so why not have some art on the label? It doesn't matter what it represents. But
Yeah, you got to be you. For me, trying to be somebody else and live in somebody else's world has never worked for me. Good, bad, or indifference, right or wrong, I live in Mac's world. Yeah. And when I trying to live in somebody else's world, that doesn't work for me.
Well, Mac's World has been working out pretty damn well for you.
Max has been working out really good for me. I just want to be able to say I helped somebody in life achieve their goal. And I often get emails or texts or calls from folks saying, thank you for sharing that information. In fact, I just got a call, a long letter from a young lady in East Texas. And she called me up and told me she wanted to have a vineyard because she wanted to get into the wine business. And she goes, what would you advise me to do? I says, number one thing you do, you need to learn about the business. And the way you learn about the business is you find somebody a hell of a lot smarter than you. And then you can get there. So we talked about the vineyard, and it says, I don't know what type of grapes you should grow. You need to go to your ag department, that's free, or your university in Texas or wherever it is, and find out what grape grow good in your area. That's your task. When you find that out, you come back to me. And so she did. I forgot all about her. So she come back to me and she goes, oh, I'm so happy I got all that done. She has gotten herself so knowledgeable. I am so proud of her. You know what I mean?
She's in Texas?
Yeah, she's in Texas, and it's just things like that make you feel good that you help someone.
Yeah.
I can't teach you how to make wine that you like. I don't know how to do that. I can teach you how to make wine that I like, but to teach you how to make wine like Chuck does or Bert Williams did, I couldn't teach. I couldn't teach that to you.
It sounds like you learned well from those guys on how to help
I learned to them, but then I learned how to tweak things. I don't know if I told you or not, but see, my father was a moonshine maker.
Yeah.
And so he also taught me a little bit about, taught me a lot about life, but he also taught me about when he was making his shine that you had to use good grain. His was made out of corn. And in the wintertime, we used to, shell the corn off the cob, and we would be very careful on the kernels that came off the cob. They had to be full. They couldn't be immature of things on there, and we had to go through painstaking to only put the good grains in that barrel.
Yeah.
So same thing with grapes. You got to have good fruit. Otherwise, good luck. But there's a theory out there that on making wine, and I have come to the conclusion that a good winemaker can make good wine in what they call bad years. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of like a good chef can make good food out of old chicken, so to speak.
Right.
And so I think a good winemaker can adjust things to make good wine in bad years.
You may not be able to make a lot of it, but sometimes you got just enough to make some good wine.
Yeah. So life is good.
I'm impressed with all you've been able to accomplish.
Well, I always say, if I wake up, I tell Miss Lil sometime when I wake up, and I said, you know, you're the most luckiest woman in the world. And then she says a few things that I can't quote back, but it's kind of nice to hear her say that on a regular basis. So
Yeah.
it's all good. Life is good, man. I can't ask for anything any
Awesome.
better.
I'm
Okay.
impressed. Well, thank you for sitting down with me for a while.
Sure. Always a
I
pleasure.
love your stories.
All right.